Hi, I'm Coach Tim, and welcome to You-niversal Upgrade. This is a conversation in the pursuit of health and growth of the mind, body, and spirit. This is where my daughter, Yaelle, and I will be having these online conversations where she's in the US and I'm in Taiwan, and we'll be talking about various topics that has been helping us grow. And in this first episode, we will be having a conversation about particularly her traumatic experience going through depression, suicide, and what we did as a family to overcome that. So hope you enjoy this episode. So today's conversation is with Yaelle. She's my daughter. And we will be starting this series, which is mainly our conversation on our journey, books we read, insights we gain from different places we learn. So I've been a health coach and neurofeedback brain trainer, and Yaelle is studying dietetics, nutrition, and college right now. But our family has gone through quite a bit of a journey, both mental health as well as physical health. So today's focus will be more on Yaelle's journey and her experience with depression, suicide, as well as many continual health challenges. So we'll try to address all that. Yaelle, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you are doing right now, as a student, or who you are. So because people don't know who you are, so give us a little bit of a spiel about you.
Okay, well, I live in California right now. I go to Cal Poly Pomona, and I'm a junior studying nutrition in the dietetics program. So in the future, I'm interested in going into naturopathic medicine. But yeah, my interests in, future career-wise does surround health. And it largely has come from my own experience being sick. And in the future, I'd like to be able to help other people heal, especially other people who have found a difficult time addressing their health using conventional methods and going through the conventional healthcare system.
Yeah, because I think that's definitely been our family's experience dealing with a lot of what went on. So maybe we can just kind of start from the beginning, your journey. And it's started quite early. I mean, I think as early as maybe when you were in 7th, 8th grade, starting to show symptoms of mental challenges with depression and anger. And sometimes I know we don't necessarily remember that far back, or sometimes we even maybe repress the memory, or just the medication kind of impact our memory. But maybe you can share with us just how much you remember, what you felt like, and what was going on back then.
Yeah. I mean, definitely it's hard to kind of remember. Even looking back now, I feel like that was a totally different life. It almost feels like a totally different person, or a separate life, just because my life is so different now. But memory, my whole memory of that period of time when I was very depressed and on medication, off medication, that whole time it is kind of a blur. But before this, I actually looked at some of my old journal or diary entries and stuff from when I was around that age, and it was almost really surprising. I was a little shocked because it just I read one when I was 12 or almost 13. I wrote I'm turning 13 soon. And one of the entries said I feel terrible. I'm not looking forward to anything. And I was just very hopeless. And I was certain that I wrote that if I don't graduate, or if I don't finish 8th grade, I'm going to kill myself. And I guess I didn't realize that I felt like that so early on. And it was, yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was almost kind of shocking. And it feels like a totally different person because I guess I just realized reading it just earlier that, wow, that it really started very, very early on. I was like 12 to 13. That was like seventh grade, eighth grade. And throughout that time, I just remember being angry all the time or being very upset all the time and just very emotionally like disturbed, or just I had a lot of turmoil, inner turmoil going on, and it would always come out as anger. I remember being angry
Mm-hmm.
all the time, where the tiniest thing would set me off. And yeah, I was just angry all the time. I had a lot of outbursts, and I remember having anxiety too. I remember
Mm-hmm.
having anxiety attacks, and then only later on realizing that they were anxiety attacks. I remember not being able to
Mm-hmm.
put a name to it. I didn't know what it
Mm-hmm.
was. I just remember sitting at my desk on the fifth floor in homeschool trying to do my work, and then I just not wouldn't be able to, and I would just be like very, very jittery, and I just like could not focus. And I just like I had so much energy, and I just like would start to freak out. And I remember at
Mm-hmm.
that time I didn't know what to do. So I would either, well, I if I were trying to do something like more positive, I might go on a run. But oftentimes if I did freak out, if I was very angry, then I would self-harm. And so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was a lot of just like negative emotion constantly, and I didn't know what to do about it. And I remember just like wanting to be good or wanting it to stop. I remember thinking a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times that like, oh, why can't I just be like my sister or my brother, and they're fine, like they're the good kids. I'm the one who's like freaking out all the time and like tormenting my
Mm-hmm.
mom. And yeah, she had a really tough time too in homeschooling me. And yeah, like I remember this one time, or this period of time. I actually don't even know how long this was, but I remember because I like tormented my mom so much that I was like kicked out of the house for a while, which was like kind of ironic because I was homeschooled, you know, as a homeschooler.
Yeah, you got
But
expelled from
yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah. And so it was not fun. It was not pleasant for any of us. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah, mom definitely got the brunt of it because of
yeah,
homeschooling. Yeah, and it's not that we wanted to homeschool; it's just we didn't. The school that we wanted to send you to did not have capacity, so we had to wait.
yeah,
And you know, if it's nobody's fault, it's just the circumstances. Yeah, but definitely, I think yeah, I didn't get as much of that because I was always away to work, right? So
yeah.
mom got most of that, and so you share a little bit of what that panic attack felt like. I think maybe if you remember more details, I think that may be helpful for a lot of people because because I also see right now because I'm doing neurofeedback training for some people. In fact, I just met somebody who didn't realize that she's having panic attacks, and then when she started to describe these symptoms, and there are definitely signs of panic attacks, but oftentimes you don't even know what it is. Like you said, you can't put a label to it, so you just know that it felt wrong, but you don't know. So maybe you can describe some of these things that you notice or remember, and I think that can be helpful.
Yeah, so for panic attacks for me, it was mostly I think at the time I wasn't very in tune at all with what my body was doing or what my body felt like physiologically, but mentally what I felt was just very overwhelmed. I felt like I did feel like a panic or like a scared. I like I
Mm,
had to do something, or something terrible was happening, or I just felt like I was freaking out. So that's what it felt like emotionally. And physiologically, I think I did I think my heart rate was increased, and I did feel it was like going into fight or flight mode. I guess you could describe it as like sympathetic system activation, but I wasn't so in tune with that at the time. For the most part, when I had these anxiety attacks, it didn't get so bad to the point where I didn't feel like I could breathe. I think before then I would just I would have to go do something, or oftentimes I would go on a run. But yeah, for the most part, like when I had panic attacks, like my breathing was okay. I just felt like I was freaking out, and then I had to do something. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that started pretty early, 7th grade turning into eighth grade, and that just kind of continued. And how would you describe its progression? Because we also looked into starting medication back then, and we'd try all kinds of different combinations of things. Yeah, but maybe you can describe a little bit of that progression.
Yeah, so I went into like counseling. I think it was 8th grade. I don't know if I think I started medication in 8th grade too. If I didn't in 8th grade, it was at least by like 9th grade. And I remember I didn't want to do it because I was like, what kind of like high schooler or like middle schooler takes medication? Like I've never heard of that. And so I remember not really wanting to, but I was like, I guess I don't really know what else to do. I remember not liking the counseling at all. I almost felt like emotionally violated each time I went, and I think it just wasn't a good fit. But I think that it's a very tough situation to be in, just because I was so young and I didn't feel like I could advocate for myself, and it was hard to put things into words, or hard to even know what I was thinking or feeling. So like I couldn't even voice that. So I mean, it was a tough situation, but I remember going in, every time I would come out very angry, or would come out like even more angry than I was before, like going in. And I was like constantly angry. But yeah, I remember coming out, like every time I would leave a session, I would come out feeling worse. And I think that it was just a huge disconnect, and I think it's just tough at the age. I don't know if it could have been any better, just because like it's hard to, like, even as an adult, it's hard to put things into words. But as like a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, it's it's even harder. So I think that like the counseling just wasn't a great fit. And I remember trying a lot of different kinds of medications. I remember seeing like multiple psychiatrists over time too. And I felt like each time it might have helped a little bit, but it never lasted. We just always ended up increasing the dosage, and then we would just increase and increase and increase until that was like the maximum safe dosage. And then when that would stop working, then we would just switch to another one, and then the same thing again. And it just over and over and over again. And then I would go see a new psychiatrist when I didn't feel like that was working. And that just kept going. And it just felt like a long time, and with very little to show for it.
Yeah, so I think from a parent's perspective, we also didn't know. I mean, back then we just didn't know what options were there, because that's you hear, medication, counseling. Usually, that's about the only thing, and so
and
we also didn't know how to approach it. And I think in some ways, probably many families facing this kind of situation are feeling like, of course, we understand that there may not be always be a good fit the psychiatrists or the therapists are always trying to do their best, but there is also a limitation of how much you as a young person can process intellectually or mentally, right? Because we know that you wanted to do good, you didn't want to behave or act like this or feel like this, and you had a hard time describing what that is like, and also it's beyond your willpower, your control, right? Yeah, and so one of the ways that it expresses itself is self-harm, which is, I think, something we're also seeing more and more. So maybe you can describe a little bit of what that is like, and I know that it's a coping mechanism in some way. So maybe you can help people who cannot even imagine why anybody would do that to themselves, or what it felt like from your perspective.
Yeah, that this is something else I read back on when I was looking at my old like diary entries. I wrote about how I felt crazy, but that I enjoyed it. And I think that it is crazy. I mean, it's very, very weird to see and look at from the outside. But a lot of it, where it came from when I did it, it was I was so angry all the time, and I didn't know where to turn that. And I really hated like hurting the people around me. Like, I didn't want to, but I did it all the time. Like, I would always just explode on everyone, especially my mom, just because she was there, and I really hated it, and I didn't want to do that. And so I think that was one way in that, I guess, that craze, or that I guess just being so overwhelmed with all these negative emotions. It's one way I figured it out, like where to turn it to. And it wasn't it's not a positive outlet at all, but it's all I knew how to do, or all I figured out how to do, because it did make me feel better. It's very weird, but it did feel good when I did it, and it did feel comforting when I did it. And I mean, it is kind of messed up, but I think that, I guess if you look at what's happening physiologically, you do get like a little dopamine released, or endorphins. You do get a little rush, and they are like feel good neurochemicals. And so I guess if you're looking at a physiological standpoint, you can see where that's coming from. And I guess you could say it's similar. You could compare it to other, I guess, like coping behaviors people have. It can be similar if you're looking at like the physiological or neurochemical impact. It can be similar to, say, like emotional eating or like binge eating, for example. And some people do. And so I think it's just one of these coping behaviors that I found at a young age, that it worked. And then I continued to do it. So.
Yeah, it actually got pretty severe. It became pretty scary.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to do, and I think the standard approach is control, right? So basically, everybody's telling us we as parents gotta lock you up, make sure, or not so much lock you up, but make sure your doors don't lock. So, right, and we have to search your room every day to find sharp objects, and we cannot leave you alone. And I think in some ways we're fortunate in that we could implement some of that, but for a lot of families, they both have to work just to earn a living. So what do you do, right?
Yeah.
So we saw that progressing starting as early as 7th grade, and then progressing, and like you said, there were cycles of ups and downs. It kind of gets better with some medication, but then it just kind of slides back. But I also remember that there are times where you seem just like very flat and kind of dumbed down, and and I remember you describing simple schoolwork as being very difficult. I don't know if you remember
Yeah.
any of that, and or you describing thinking back that whole period was kind of a blank. You don't even know what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know
Often,
if you
yeah.
can describe some of that.
Yeah. I don't know what that, like, why that was the case. I don't know if it was like depression or other like mental, like chemical imbalances going on, or the medication, or both of them at the same time. But I, even now, sometimes when I talk to some like high school friends about like what happened, they'll tell me stories. They'll be like, "Oh, do you remember when this happened, or when this person, when we all did this?" And I'll just be like, "No, I don't remember." And it kind of scares me sometimes, because there are large periods of time where or a lot of things that happen that I
Mm,
don't really remember, but when someone brings it up, then I can kind of picture it, but it's just large parts of my memory are like not quite there. And then what I do remember from high school though is like I almost felt like I was like a zombie going through school. And
mm,
I remember there were like a few instances where I would just be at school and then I felt like I woke up. This is all I know how to describe it as, but I felt like I woke up. And then I'd be like, oh, I'm back. And oh, I'm in school. Oh, like geometry class. Okay. And then I would just kind of slide back down into that like autopilot zombie mode again for a long
mm.
time, and then I'd wake up again, and then just for a little bit, just to be like, oh yeah, I'm alive, and then I just go back into that state. And I think that a lot of times in that state, like that's where my memory didn't quite work so well. But I would
Yeah,
still be able to function and still talk to people, and still like hang out with friends and like do things, but I guess like I wasn't there enough, or that whole like memory system wasn't working. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And we definitely observed that because there were times where you were asleep for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
get
I
up
could
and
sleep
still
for
have very
12
low energy.
hours. Yeah, I could sleep for 12 hours easily, and then sleep longer.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and so I mean, of course, during that time, we try all kinds of things, right? Even beyond counseling, medication, we looked into diet changes. I think we began to realize that diet impact mental health with a very rudimentary understanding, and we even did. Went to the U.S. for brain scan, right, with Dr. Amen, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I think we began to realize that there's more happening than just it's a behavioral thing. It's like not enough emotional self control or behavioral self control, or not enough right thinking, right? So I think we began to have some of that understanding, and then we were trying to do something positive. But I think it still wasn't enough. It was still too challenging, and so even with that change in approach, things were still progressing negatively, and I think eventually even led to suicide attempts. So I don't know if you remember some of that thought process that you had. There were, I think, at least two times where we had to take you to the hospital, to emergency
Yeah.
room. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess for my first suicide attempt, that was in ninth grade, I think. And I remember that one not being so planned. I mean, it was kind of planned, but I remember stashing away my medication, and I remember like trying to like build up a lot and keep it for if I ever wanted to kill myself, because I did want that as an option. And that is one of the things that like I just like read earlier, and when I was looking back at my like diary entries from like 8th grade, I wrote that, okay, you know, like here's my plan B kind of thing, or here's how I'm going to kill myself if I ever need to, or if I, well, my plan at the time was if I don't finish 8th grade, then you know I'm going to. And then I guess later, one of the ways was that like, okay, I'll like store up my medication and use that. And so I ended up doing that in 9th grade. I think it probably was a period of time where I wasn't doing too well, and then I started storing them up. I remember I had some from before. I don't know why I had some, but after a while, I remember you and my mom would come in. Either one of you guys would come in at night and give me my medication. And I think at first you would watch me take it, but after a while, I think you just gave it to me. And so I remember taking that every night and just like putting it in my desk. And then so like that time I remember I'm like, I'll just keep it there. I don't have a specific date, but I'm just going to store it up in case I ever like feel so terrible that, you know, I'm just going to do it. Because I remember feeling like it's, I guess, almost like as if I was living on borrowed time. Like I really shouldn't be alive, or already accepted that I don't want to be alive, but I'm just living anyway to see how it goes. And if I ever just like don't want to live anymore, then yeah, this is the default. It's kind of like my mindset already. I already accepted that, you know, one way or another, this is how I'm going to die, or this is how it's going to go. It's just a matter of when. And so that was my mindset going into the first time. I was just like, okay, if anything ever happens, if I ever feel so terrible again that I remember again that it's not worth it, then I have like an out, or I have some relief. So it really wasn't, none of the stuff was really coming from a place of like I wanted to hurt anyone or even myself. I almost saw it as like it was relief. And that is one thing that like I think it's like a major disconnect between people who like have committed suicide, or like who have attempted suicide, or know somebody who has, and people who like just completely don't understand it, or maybe just don't have exposure to it, or like who just can't understand why anyone would do that. Because I think that for most people who do try, it is kind of like, you know, they're seeking relief. It's like if you choose to do something, or if you choose to try to kill yourself, it's because you think that it would be better that way. And I think that it is a compelling argument. When you're in that much pain, then yeah, it would be nicer to just have none of it exist anymore. Yeah. So that's, I was almost like as if I was saving it for a rainy day kind of thing. So if it ever got so bad again, then I could get rid of all of that pain, I guess. And so that was the first time, my first suicide attempt, I guess, that reasoning. But the second one was definitely more calculated. I had a date for it. I was like, okay, on this day, I don't remember what date it was now, but I remember I'm like, on this day, I'm gonna kill myself. And so at that time, I knew what medication I was taking, and I looked it up to see how much would kill you. I made sure I had like many times that amount. And
that was your junior year,
point, I think. Yeah, that was my junior year. And
in high school. Yeah, junior year in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I saved up a lot, and just took it that night.
Yeah. I mean, even just hearing you describe it right now, it's pretty traumatic. I mean, for me as a parent, because I still remember driving to the hospital and doing just activated charcoal, pumping activated charcoal into your stomach, trying to absorb that.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think it was by the grace of God that you even lived, because the doctors were not necessarily hopeful. They could see, I mean, we could see the neurological system damage, because you were shaking uncontrollably, your heart rate was not normal. I mean, it was a pretty strong medication. It was damaging your nervous system for sure. But somehow you lived through it. Like you said, it was many times over lethal dosage for that medication.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, much later we found out that many times these medication can worsen suicidal ideation and action.
Yeah.
So, I know that during the process you did try really hard to overcome it. I think that's maybe sometimes people do not realize the amount of mental, emotional effort you put in, or people struggling with depression put in trying to overcome it. And so maybe you can describe some of that. I think it's important to hear it from somebody who's going through it. What is it like mentally inside?
Yeah. Well, I think that naturally whenever anyone is in a state that's like not ideal, or that hurts, they're trying really hard to get out of it. And I think that's just natural. Like, if your hand is over a burning stove, you want to yank your hand away. You're naturally incentivized to try to get out of it. So if anyone is depressed, like, they don't want to be there. It's really like they're not trying to be there. It's not comfortable. But yeah, I remember trying a lot of things. I think because of the community I was in, I really tried hard to do the right Christian thing. And so I would like pray a lot, and I made sure I was like doing my devotions. I started a lot of devotional plans, and I tried to do all the right things, like one day one Christian person would tell me that like, oh, do this thing, or they would send me this Bible verse or that Bible verse, and I would try to do it. And when it would not work, or when I wouldn't feel better from it, or when my depression just wouldn't go away, then I'd be like, okay, am I not doing this right, or yeah, I didn't really know, but I continued to pray and try to like do the right things. And yeah, it didn't feel like it got any better, because I could try to do all these things all I wanted, but I guess like physiologically or mentally, my brain was still just upset all the time, or I was still angry all the time. And yeah, and I think that it really is something that like I could barely control. I really couldn't control it. And I think that's why I resorted to things like self-harm, because I was making such a large effort to not hurt people and not hurt the people around me. And that was one where I'm like, okay, at least I'm turning it on myself. And yeah, like I really did try though. Like I would pray and like do my devotions. I remember learning about how exercise could help, and just like, neurochemically give you like more happy chemicals and stuff, and that could be a natural antidepressant kind of thing. And so I remember exercising for a time, and I didn't feel anything. I just felt tired and sweaty afterwards, and I was like, okay, like, I exercised over half an hour, like I should be feeling good now, or running, or or doing like P90 at home workouts and stuff like that. And I didn't feel better. I didn't have that like happy neurochemical cocktail. Like it just wouldn't really work. And I really wonder what was going on like neurologically in my brain at the time, because I remember after, when I didn't feel depressed anymore, after a good amount of recovery, I remember exercising and feeling good afterwards and being like, no wonder people exercise. I get it now. And so it really was like, there were physical or like neurological limitations that were just innately there. I did put in a lot of the work. And yeah, I remember trying doing, for a while you were doing these like mindfulness exercises with me, or showing me how to do some of these like mindfulness exercises. I think they're from like the DBT like a workbook or something. And yeah, I remember trying to do some of those. That a lot of these things, they were really difficult, because it just took a lot of energy and willpower, and I was able to stick with them for a long time without anything to show for it. And so eventually I would just stop. But I did spend a lot of time doing these things, and I think that sometimes, like, I don't know what it is. I'm no neuroscientist, but I don't know what it is, but I think it just didn't click. It didn't work.
Yeah, and it's not for the lack of trying. In fact, I remember seeing you put in so much effort and discipline in that depleted state. So imagine just a little bit of willpower you have left, it's all spent on these things, right? And I can imagine how all these, everybody has an opinion, or has a suggestion or on what to do, and you should do this and that, and then you do it, and it seems like, from the outside, it seems like you haven't tried, but actually you have been. And then you probably feel guilty about maybe not trying hard enough because it didn't work. So that's just a lot of, I think, I guess, well-intentioned advice, but in fact, I think end up piling on more guilt, and it's not that anybody meant you harm, but I think we also see that it's not, it's much bigger than just discipline and willpower. And I don't know if you think about, I'm sure you do, and I think oftentimes people also wonder about the why question, like, why did it happen? Why was it like this? Probably people going through it right now is asking, what's the cause? Why did it take place? So I don't know, what's your perspective on the cause, the root cause, or why?
Yeah, I really don't know. I think it was a combination of things. I think that largely it did come from being isolated, and I think it was, it probably was from a feeling of loss and then isolation, because we moved to Taiwan when I was like, I think I was in 4th grade. I was going into 4th grade, and so I spent 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade in homeschool. And so it went year by year. The plan was to like put me in like school, like American or like international school. But the school that we wanted to go to it didn't have any room. And so it was just every year waiting to see, like, oh, will they have room this year? Will they have an open seat this year? And every year they didn't. So I ended up being homeschooled for that amount of time. And that was pretty difficult for me. And I didn't realize that it was like that bad or unnatural to not have a community or friends. But looking back, I think that was the major thing, because I was isolated. I just lost all my friends. I remember loving school, like going to public school in the States. I remember like loving it. I would be so excited to see my friends every day. And then I guess going from that to just homeschool in a new country where you don't know anyone and you're just at home. So you're isolated, and you're in a foreign country. You don't speak the language, but you look the part, but you're not really like, you don't really fit in there. So I think all of that, I think that was the main thing, just the isolation for so many years in such like a developmental time period of like my life, my childhood. So I think that was a major thing. But I also don't think, like my diet helped much. Like I really wasn't eating well at the time. And so, I was eating like we would have like, I remember we would have like mac and cheese like from the box, we make that a lot. We'd make like quesadillas and like eat a lot of bread and sandwiches and stuff. And a lot of those foods can be, pretty inflammatory, cause a lot of like oxidation and free radicals in the system, and those can cross through the blood-brain barrier, and inflammation in the brain is linked to depression. And so like that, if anything, it couldn't have helped. So
all the fried street foods like from night market and stuff, it was terrible.
Yeah. And so, we thought we were healthy, we thought we were like pretty healthy. And, we did like triathlon when we were younger too. That was when I was in like middle school. And I think it was
like
just middle school or high school.
Yeah.
Just middle school.
Grade. Yeah.
And, and I was always really skinny, but I think that, it wasn't healthy. So I think that, I think that played a role in that, all of that inflammation. But yeah, I think just that in combination with the isolation, like psychologically, that's really tough, because I think humans are very social creatures, and we kind of need that feedback, especially like growing up as a kid around that age. And yeah, I just think we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the community. So
so I think looking back, we can identify some of those pieces, but I also know that when I try to describe that, for a lot of people it doesn't make sense, because it said, well, you didn't go through some major PTSD, the experience, right? But I try to let people know that our trauma is not always one huge event. It could be a combination of different things building up towards a nervous system response or a neurological response, right? Or bodily memory, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you're no longer there, so we did something about it.
Yeah, right? I'm alive. I'm here.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about then what are the things along the journey that we discover over time that were helpful. I think looking back, one of the first things that obviously we start to realize about nutrition, and I was already looking to neuroscience and behavior and emotional health. So we talked about a lot of that already, but it was beyond where you can just practice like mindfulness or meditation or these kind of things. So one of the earlier things that was helpful is when we went to the Amen Clinic in Southern California and got the brain scan. So I don't know, maybe you can show us show our audience a little bit of. We have a couple scans. Yeah, so that's your scan. The one on the right is the surface activities, and the one on the left is it's inside on there's a 3D image in that sense. So I don't know if you remember much of that experience or remember what these pictures signified.
Yeah, I actually don't know too much about like the technology, but I remember that the whole experience going there was, I did feel like, oh, finally somebody knows about what's going on. or somebody kind of understands. Because this was a way that, for the first time, there was like a physical, so much more of a tangible like representation of my experience, because they could see, I guess, with different brain states, associations with like mental illness. And so for the first time, I felt like I could finally say, it's not all in my head. I'm trying. And, you know, I'm just sick, you know? And so, yeah, I guess getting these brain scans done, it did feel like almost kind of like vindication, almost like a relief that, you know, that I'm not crazy, that I'm not just like a bad person, or I'm not just trying to cause trouble for everyone, or that it kind of like validating my effort.
Yeah, so from the brain scan, you can see that something is definitely going on inside. And the one on the right is the surface, on the one on the left is the inside. And the inside, I remember the doctor said that you have this a typical diamond-shaped pattern, which is, you know, you see the middle parts, there's some more whites. The whites are the more activated areas. The blues are more quiet, and the red is kind of in between. So the lighter the color, the more activation is. Now, you have a lot of activation in the middle part of our brain, and the middle part of the brain is kind of like the danger detection center, right? And I remember the scan was 2 different days. One day is where your brain is supposed to be quiet. You're sitting in this dark room, bored out of your mind, right? So you're not thinking about anything, doing any activity, so it should be quiet. And the other day is where you are focusing on some simple math problems, something like that, right? So you are activating your brain. Your brain is engaged, is thinking, is doing something, so it should show more activity. But what happened to your brain is that when it's quiet, it's supposed to be quiet, but it's in fact very activated because it's still thinking that you are in danger. So you are, you have that anxious feeling and thoughts because your brain would not quiet down, right? So that's what we see in the middle. You see that the white activated area. So if you see what a normal brain is like, in the next slide, you will see on the leftmost brain, that's the healthy brain, you see the middle part is quiet, is mostly blue, maybe just a little bit of red. And yours is actually more like the PTSD brain, right? If you went back and see the middle part, there was a lot of activation, a lot of white in the middle. Yeah, so, and that's not because you want it to be anxious, you want to be upset. It's just your brain would not shut down, would not quiet down. Yeah, so that was a pretty significant insight you said, right? That you finally realized that, it's not because you're bad, you're trying to do something bad.
Yeah, because I oftentimes did feel like, you know, like maybe I'm just crazy, or like maybe I'm just like really messed up. I don't know why I'm like this. And I actually remember like reading back on my diary entries that like I wrote that, oh, I hate my personality. And I think that's what I attributed it to, because I was like, I didn't know what else it could be. I just felt like so crazy, because why was I acting like this? I didn't know. I wasn't trying to, but after like enough time goes by, and you know, with people talking to you like, you know, like you're choosing to be like this, then I think you kind of start to believe it. So seeing this, it was very, very helpful, not because I didn't want to take responsibility, but because like this helped me recognize the parts that I could and could not control. So
Yeah. And also remember, after going there, he was giving us nutritional and other supplementation type of advice and regimens, and we started some of that. But I think the reality was, even trying all those things, it was a little bit helpful, but still wasn't enough. In fact, your second suicide took place after this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I remember we tried to do like address my diet, and we kind of did. I remember you started to cook more stuff at home, and we stopped eating out so much to avoid more like of the inflammatory oils and stuff. And but I do remember that was really, really hard to do still. So I did some, but I remember I would still like go out to eat at times, and it it was just really, really difficult to make a huge shift or a complete shift. And I guess like I didn't feel immediate results either. And and when I think, I had a lot of ups and downs when I was depressed. And so some periods of time I would be able to do more, but other periods of time I really could not do much, and I would just like just sit or not be able to like focus on school, or I would just spend a long time, like in hours, like looking at my score, but I wouldn't be able to do it. So yeah.
So after Dr. Amen's clinic and the scans and some adjustments, and I think you tried even harder back then. But I also felt that that's kind of like the last breaking point, where you felt like, well, now I know what's happening, and I'm trying, but it's still not working. I don't know if that's what you were thinking. Yeah, but that's and soon, not too long after that, is where you had the second suicide attempt, and that's the most severe one. That literally you literally could have died. And after that, we just didn't know what else to do, because you're completely off medication, because we couldn't start. Your nervous system was so out of whack. Your health was such a bad state. We could not restart medication. So we end up taking about 6 months off and went back to the States. And start to look for other options. I don't know how much of that you remembered.
Like I remember, I think it was after my second suicide attempt. I remember like at home, I think it was a solid week of, I guess it was like withdrawal, because I remember I couldn't do anything, and I would just, like, I got up out of bed and went downstairs and sat on the couch, and that was all I could do. And I was in so much pain. I was just dizzy. My head was throbbing, and even to this day, I think that was the most pain I've ever experienced. It really, really hurt. And I remember that, and I remember just mentally after my second suicide attempt, that attempt, it was intentional, it was calculated, and I was ready to like leave. I was ready to be gone, and I was at peace with it too. I was very ready, and I thought, it was the right thing to do, and it was a pretty good option for what I had at the time. And so I think after that, after I lived and I went back home, and I just had no more motivation, no more energy, nothing more to give. I was just there, and I just, I didn't have like any more energy. But I remember we went to the US, and there was like a list of things that we wanted to try, and I just thought, okay, I'll do it. I'll put in the effort, but it's almost like too painful to be invested in it. But I'll try. I'll do it. I'll go through the motions. Like I can make myself go through the motions. I've been doing it all this time. I can do that. But to be invested in it, I couldn't do that. But I remember, I guess I only remember there was like this DBT training, or like DBT therapy Because I think it was at the Amen clinic where they diagnosed me with, well, I think was it like depression, anxiety, and BPD, the borderline personality disorder. And so we were gonna start DBT therapy, and I remember going to the first session for that and thinking that, oh, this therapist, this counselor doesn't seem bad. Like I could, like, she's I don't feel like attacked by her.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, but still, I didn't really know. But I remembered like the neurofeedback was the last thing on the list that I wanted to try, because I was like, what is like neurofeedback? It's like something like your brain and games. So it's supposed to be kind of fun or something. Like it's like it'll help your brain. And I thought, when I heard about it, I thought it was going to be like you like playing these, like, I don't know, games that tested your reaction time, and that's supposed to like help improve focus or something like that. I thought it was going to be something like that. And it wasn't at all. But I remember, I think that was the last thing we tried. Because I was like, I don't like after we went through the rest of them, I was like, okay, let's do the last one, the games, the brain games.
Yeah.
But yeah, that that one was the one that worked out the best though, because even after, I don't like, was it like 4 sessions or 2 weeks? I think I was doing 2 sessions a week or something like that. But yeah, I remember after just 2 weeks of it.
Yeah, 2 or 3 weeks. Maybe.
Yeah,
it might have been about 3 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, but after like a very short period of time, I remember waking up in the morning and like, going to the table and like getting food and then just realizing that, oh, I'm awake and it's like a reasonable time in the morning. And that was like a huge change, because I could sleep for 12 hours, no problem. And I would sleep for that long all the time, and then just sleep. Like half of the day I was sleeping. And yeah, I just remember waking up and thinking like, whoa, that's really weird. Like I have energy. And so I think that was the most significant, that was the thing that made the most significant difference. And it was really, really fast acting too. But yeah, it's just, the changes started really, really early on.
Yeah. So I think you're right. We went through different, we looked into different programs, and we were thinking about even maybe hospitalization in the States. They have these live-in programs, and we looked into...
I forgot about that. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, we look into dialectical behavioral therapy, and so we did. You did have a consult with one of the therapists, and that's right. You said you felt okay, but you didn't have any faith in it. I think at that point you just like, I'll do whatever, but I don't want to have any hope in anything.
Yeah.
And then we were also referred a therapist, trauma therapist that does neurofeedback. We didn't know what neurofeedback. In fact, we never heard of it until she said, "Oh, I have this thing I can try with you, and if you don't want to talk, you cannot talk about it. It's okay. It's still going to work, right?" So you went into it. Yeah, I remember you getting better after just a few weeks, and that was a 20-session course. She, in fact, I think we actually end up doing a few more sessions, more than 20, as much time as we had. And by the end of it, you were not 100% back for sure, but you were well enough to go back to school. So I don't remember. I don't know if you remember how that felt like toward the end, in terms of just kind of that gradual improvement over time.
Yeah, I don't really have a great sense of time, but I remember like when I was doing neurofeedback during, I don't know how long it was we were in the States for, or I don't know how long I was doing neurofeedback for, but I remember feeling better like so much better, and like so much better to the point where I was exercising. I did start exercising when I was there, and I did start eating better, trying to make my own like food choices, and reading. I started reading because I wanted to understand like what was going on with this neurofeedback thing. I'm like, why is this working? And you know, like why didn't the other things work? and like what's actually going on in the brain? And so I remember like you showed me a couple books, like A Symphony in the Brain. I think that was one of them, and then The Body Keeps the Score. And so yeah, I went through those books and then started reading more about nutrition and things like that. And so even like just in that time period where we're still in the States when I was doing neurofeedback, I felt so much better to the point where I could, you know, start exercising again and make lifestyle changes and, you know, start reading and doing these things for myself.
You dropped out of school at that time. Actually, you're not even in school. Yeah.
I dropped out of school, I think every year of high school. I dropped out of school at some point. True. My freshman year was after the suicide attempt, and then my sophomore year, it was just like some point during the year because, you know, we didn't want it to happen again, and I could feel, you know, something coming on. And then junior year was after the second suicide attempt. So every year when I was like not doing well, I dropped out of school at some point and then like made up the work and then went back. But yeah, that was not good.
And I think the transformation was dramatic. It was miraculous. In fact, so much so that we decided, hey, we have to continue for you to train. And back then it wasn't just you; it was Josiah as well, our youngest. So we both doing. You guys were both doing training, and then we decided to bring this training approach back with us to Taiwan. And I think we're very fortunate that we were allowed to receive the training so that we can do this, continue. And I think originally that's all we wanted to do, just continue this with you guys, and also maybe use it at my work. And back then I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities in a large nonprofit in Taiwan. That was my main work. And 70% of these individuals in these institutions or group homes are on some sort of psychiatric medication. They all have emotional behavioral challenges. And that is just being dumbed down, controlled with medication. So, and then I started, you end up using this technology with many of them as well, and seeing pretty significant impact from violent autistic behaviors to more mild anxiety type of reactions. So we end up doing that, right? In fact, I think I still have a picture of you doing neurofeedback. And I don't know if you can show that real quick. A couple slides later.
Oh.
So it's just basically brainwave amplifier, EEG amplifier, and the feedbacks are usually in some sort of games or 3D environments or graphical images that changes according to your brainwave. So that was a significant piece in your recovery. But we also, I think at that time, realized how significant the nutritional piece was. And so we started to implement, because we know that even with training, your brain is recovering, you still need good building blocks, nutrition for your brain, for your nervous system, for your metabolic system, in order for you to ultimately recover and maintain and even grow. So we start to put in the nutritional pieces as well. So maybe you can tell us, so what are some of the things that you find helpful nutritionally?
Yeah, so nutritionally, what I try to do the most is really just avoid things that could like cause harm or inflammation in the brain and in the system. So mostly, I think the first things that we did was try to get rid of inflammatory oils. So like a lot of vegetable oils, seed oils, and refined sugar. And so like I remember a couple simple things I did to start was get rid of food that was processed, like packaged, like chips or like any like crackers or anything, and or like a lot of snacks, like packaged snacks and stuff, and any food with added sugars. So I still did eat, carbs and like fruits and things like that, but tried to just primarily get my food from whole foods and whole food sources, like the actual food, and like cooked meals from real foods.
Yeah, so we end up cooking a lot more, buying groceries, become picky about where to eat. Like if we eat out, it's usually like sushi, sashimi, or hot pot or something like that. So nutritionally, we start to dig into it, because you also have, because just the overdose and all kinds of things, you still have lingering health challenges. So like even after we came back, you had a lot of digestion issues. I mean, we were going to the hospital, to clinics like every couple of weeks or once a month, and just keep adding medications. Now it's for your stomach. I think that was a huge one. Right? Yeah.
So my health overall didn't get completely better from there. I think the neurofeedback really, really helped me mentally. So like mentally, when I went back, my challenges were mostly health issues. School was great. School was completely fine. I ended up like redoing junior year. So I did went back to Taiwan, did my junior year and senior year, and I did great. Like it was great in school. Got like straight A's. School became so easy. Which was really crazy. But I think that does show that it wasn't completely a matter of willpower or discipline. Like I was capable of that. It's just I didn't have the tools or didn't have a good setup, mentally in my brain. But yeah, school was very easy. But I still had a lot of like gut issues, and I think that largely was because of the overdoses. So kind of wrecked my gut, and so I had a lot of different digestive issues, probably like terrible leaky gut, and so I dealt with that. And over time I've just been experimenting a lot with my diet and making different variations and trying different things. But yeah, it definitely wasn't completely better after that.
Yeah, and this journey is still ongoing. In fact, I think we continue to try adjustments. I mean, we got into a ketogenic diet. I mean, that became my experimentation as well, because I would try to see how we could implement it and see how it works, right? I was eating tons of butter. Now I know I don't need to eat that much butter, but I think that's it's just part of the journey. And then so you try a lot of those things, right? Ketogenic diet and fasting, even like carnivore diet. So maybe you can describe some of the things that worked well for you.
Okay, yeah. A couple of the first things I tried was the GAPS diet, or like a kind of part of the GAPS diet, or low FODMAP. And that was because one of the first like major issues I had with my gut and digestion was like leaky gut and terrible bloating, a lot of pain. And so I was trying some elimination diets, and I think that I think my gut was just in a terrible state because, you know, this was coming like straight from my second overdose. So I wouldn't say it helped a ton, but I mean, it did help somewhat. I think I was just, my stomach was in such a terrible state that like I just nothing, I couldn't really take anything well. And yeah, it's actually been a long time, like for a good couple years. Like I've still had like really, really bad digestive issues. And so I remember it actually got worse for a while before it started to get better recently. But as it was getting worse, I remember just being so afraid of food. I became so afraid of food because any amount of food, or it felt like no matter what I ate, even like healthy foods or like foods that weren't like super processed and like junk foods, they would still make me feel pretty bad. And so I went on like a calorie deficit, which was not good for me at the time. And I think that that has also contributed to like other like hypothyroid issues that I am still dealing with now. But more recently, some of the things that I did try were the ketogenic diet or the carnivore diet. So when I tried the ketogenic diet, I remember just metabolically, I think that I had just been on a calorie deficit for so long. It was just really stressful on my body. And I remember not being able to feel like I had enough energy. I was just constantly fatigued on the ketogenic diet, but I also had different issues with my thyroid, and I don't think I wasn't on thyroid medication at the time. So like that was difficult, but low carb generally helped me. I remember feeling better when I was low carb. I couldn't go all the way to keto, like very low carb, but if I stayed around like 100 grams net carb, I generally felt better. And I think that was because of, you know, like the digestion of carbs and like, I guess the different bacteria. And so I don't know if I had like somewhat of like a SIBO or like a gut bacteria imbalance, but in general, even now, I find that staying lower carb helps, or digestion wise, I do feel better on a lower carb diet. And then I guess about a year ago now, I tried carnivore, well, carnivore-ish. I've never gone full carnivore. It's really hard. Yeah, I tried that, and actually that was one of the things that helped that my stomach felt the best on. And right now I'm not full carnivore, but I would say I'm more of like animal based, on a more animal based diet, and without a ton of different like leafy green vegetables, or like a lot of like FODMAP vegetables and plants. And I think that in general, because my stomach or my gut is not 100%, that's easier on my system, and that's when my stomach and digestion feels a lot better. And so that is something I am still experimenting with to see how much variation I can take right now. And I might still try to do carnivore for longer, or carnivore-ish diet for longer, until my stomach feels better. But already, like when I did try a carnivore-ish diet for a couple months, like I did feel like a vast improvement, and that was the best my stomach had felt in years. So we're looking into it so much. I think initially we were doing tons of vegetables because, you know, we're always told vegetables is healthy. So we're drinking tons of smoothie, lots of kale, romaine, spinach. Lots of raw vegetables and salads and smoothies, a lot of nuts and seeds. And so that wasn't, I mean, for me, I didn't see any significant until I got kidney stones, because before that I didn't know it was bad, because I'm more generally in a better state until I got kidney stones from all the vegetables. And then but for you, I think that was very negatively impacted. I think you were doing so much
vegetable salad. I remember just tiny little, even just like you get up in the morning, you drink water, your stomach is already bloated. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember getting really upset because I was like I didn't know what to eat because I remember I woke up in the morning and I ate one egg and then my stomach bloated so much and I just remember being so like self-conscious about it too. I was like I look like I'm pregnant and like I feel so fat and yeah. But
Yeah. So yeah, carnivore. I also know you did like a 3-day fast, and those are pretty helpful in terms of your thyroid reset, kind of.
Yeah, so I'm actually not like I don't know what was going on physiologically, but I remember for a long time, like I tried keto multiple times, and I've done like 24-hour fasts and like almost 48-hour fasts, and then and I remember one summer I think we were in the States, and I think I was in college already, and by that time I had started to, increase my calories again. So I wasn't at like an unhealthy calorie deficit, just like chronically. And so I was eating a more appropriate amount and I was on thyroid medication. And we decided that, like, okay, you know what, let's just try. I think it was a 48-hour fast. I don't even think it was 72 hours, but it was just a 2-day fast or a 2-day broth fast. It wasn't even like a complete fast or dry fast, a broth fast. And yeah, after that, I remember waking up the next morning, like after broke the fast, and then like the next day, I remember waking up and I'm like, wow, I feel pretty good. Like maybe this is why people fast, like I'm feeling pretty good, and like I have a good amount of energy. I didn't feel like tired waking up, which was pretty normal for me. And I attributed it to like, metabolic issues, hypothyroidism. But yeah, I felt like I had good energy. And then I remember just going through the day, like, okay, maybe I do need to fast more regularly. The next day I woke up and I still had that same energy. And I was like, oh, is this gonna be a thing now? Like, am I just like, do I just have this energy? I hope this doesn't go away, and it didn't. I think there was just some metabolic shift that happened, and I guess it was kind of like a kick starting of the like, my fat burning system or my metabolism, my body getting to know how to use ketones for fuel too, and yeah, and then I guess that just really helped.
Yeah, and that's when I think we've been digging into nutrition, and especially the low carb, ketogenic, metabolism focused, and brain health focused nutrition for a while. So in fact, I think after this episode, we'll be diving into some of these books we read and maybe talk about them and picking out things that's been helpful and maybe we can more easily implementable, I guess, for a lot of people. So you can see some of the books we dive into, from Nora Gagauta's Primal Fat Burner, Dr. Perlmutter, Dr. Kate Shanahan, and so forth. In fact, I think Primal Fat Burner is interesting because Nora Gagautta is also a neurofeedback practitioner and a nutritionist. She was training people doing neurofeedback with the same system that you were trained on, and now that I'm using to train people. In fact, during one of our training sessions in one of the seminars, or not a conference, she was one of the speakers and attendant. So we had a chance to meet her. Well, I had a chance to meet her, and she signed a book in your honor for you. We still have that book. So I think these were very helpful, right, in addressing some of these issues, because you were I mean, we're going to China Medical University Hospital regularly and getting medications all the time, and they didn't really do anything. So so nutrition, we'll be diving into that more. Other lifestyle factors as well. I don't know if you have some that you feel that is helpful, like I guess in my camera I can't see the Juve unit back there, but we use infrared light, we try to use blue light blocking glasses to help with sleep and melatonin production, and what are some of the things that you do in terms of other lifestyle practices that you find is helpful for your mental health, physical health?
Some of the things I'm realizing are important right now during quarantine to keep myself sane is the exercise. I think I need a regular exercise. I realize that, if I go more than a few days without exercising, then I start to not feel too good mentally. I start to get more negative. But exercise really helps me. I feel a lot more sane after a good workout. So I like to try to exercise like at least every few days. And I think just going outside, this past week, I think I haven't been prioritizing like getting outside or even just going for a walk or getting some sun. But yeah, I went on a walk a couple days ago, and I was like, wow, I really need to do this more often. So I think walking outside, getting sun, especially with the lockdown, it's very easy to, I guess, get into a more like restricted or constrained like brain state, in that it's, if you're just sitting at your desk like focusing on your work, or just inside all day and focusing on like your attention or your vision on something that's like directly in front of you, it's hard to, I guess, open up a little bit more. But it helps me to go outside and walk just to see things that are further away, and to just get that motion going. So that really helps. That in the sun, that's really nice. As for other things, I like to use the Juve, the infrared light. I don't know, it just feels good.
Our cat likes it too, if you see the picture.
It just feels good. And one thing I do like to do, I still need to like get on doing it regularly, but I like to, I guess, practice gratitude. I like to write things down in a little journal, and that's something that I even did when I was in high school, and in that terrible depressed state. And I think that even then, that was one of the things that was, I guess, a practice that helped. I think that one did help a bit. And it didn't cure my depression, but it did feel good. It was, I think it was helpful. And so that is something I still like to do now. So, for me, it can just be like coming up with one thing that I'm grateful for, like today or this week or these few days. So,
a lot of these lifestyle factors, I think we will dive into that in future conversations as well. I think we have a picture of the Juve that we use that our or at least one of our cats love. She always sneaks into my room or office / workout room when I'm doing Juve. She likes to lie in front of it as well. So there are a lot of very natural, non-invasive modalities that are quite helpful for physical and mental improvement. And like you say, you also find that practices like gratitude, it's helpful, right? grew up in you grew up in a Christian home, and I'm like the fourth generation pastor. So lots of pastors in my in our lineage. But in many ways, that's your experience. Our whole family's experience was also a reawakening of sorts. I think a opening up of our faith understanding or spiritual understanding, and I think we're probably still in the process of allowing our soul or spirits to be reshaped and expanded. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what that is like, that the angst we felt in our, I guess, a very traditional church experience or typical spiritual experience in a church. What that was like, and then how are we looking at it now, or how are you looking at it now?
I think I think it was really tough just being in such a conservative Christian environment. It did feel really suffocating at times. I think because I went to like private Christian school, and so that was just built into the school system too, and just getting that all the time, that was really, really tough, especially in the place that I was at, because I wasn't doing too well. And I guess the most common thing, it's hard enough without like religion being brought into it. Like just getting like these suggestions from people, or people telling you, oh, you should just try this, you should just try that. And it just feels like, well, I already, like, do you think I haven't thought of that? It's my life. I'm the one who has to deal with this problem 24/7. Do you think like I haven't tried that already? And to get that with religion packed on top of it, or packed into it, it just gives it this tone of this moral superiority, or this moral judgment. And there was a lot of moral judgment just packed into the things that people would say innately, just because when things are talked about in a religious sense, it's it often just has this like good or bad value like attached to it. And so especially with like mental illness, a lot of times people will like associate mental illness with sin, or say that mental illness is a sin, or being depressed or being anxious is a sin, or that suicide is like the worst sin. And that never felt good, because it's not like I was trying to hurt anyone. And you could say that a lot of times people just sin, and and they're not trying to sin, but people fall into sin. But it's like that really wasn't helpful at the time. And it just felt very, very alienating. And and I guess like, I think we all experienced, a lot of us in the family like experienced people, if we went to confide in someone, we'd often be met with just, oh, here's the Bible verse, like, here's another Bible verse. You go to another person, give you another Bible verse. It's kind of just like throwing Bible verses at you, because like, they don't know what else to say or like what else to do. And it's like, I get it. It's tough. Like, I wouldn't know what to do. But at the same time, I think that just having religion in it just ended up being something that was a lot more hurtful. I think primarily because of the judgment. And I think that personally, in my experience, having the religion like tied into the school system made it really, really kind of complicated, because I think the way I was kind of treated at times when I was going to school, there were periods of times, like that I was out of school, or wasn't like, was taking a break from school, or doing school online rather than in person, when I was still attending that private Christian school. But I think that because I was depressed and because, I was kind of a rare case. I think that a lot of the staff didn't know what to do with me. And I'm sure it was scary for them too. But
Yeah.
I just remember the way it was handled. I was, kind of treated like a virus, treated like, oh, we got to contain this. We got to get rid of it. And yeah, so there were periods of time where, like I wasn't allowed like on campus, or wasn't allowed to do this or that, or had to be watched, or had to be supervised. Yeah, that, and like different things that I would hear from like different people about like what staff or what students have said about me or my family. And I mean, and this kind of like sentiment kind of extended to some of my friends too. And I was having a conversation with a friend the other day. She also, has struggled with similar things. And she also described feeling like this. That's the way she said it, that she felt like, we were being treated like like we were viruses. And yeah, and so I think that because it was a little complicated, because it is a school and they have to function a certain way, but just to have religion tied into it, and just to constantly have people like the staff who kind of represent the religion bring religion into it and have to make these decisions, it just made it a little kind of complicated and very hurtful. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Christianity is about exhibiting the right behavior and having right control, and that seems to override everything else. Like everything is judged black and white as a like having your behavior as an indication of you're good or bad or right or wrong. But not realizing that there are many aspects where it's much bigger and beyond our capacity. So I think even just understanding how the brain works, we begin to realize that, hey, there are actually a lot of dysfunctions there. That's not so much it's not a moral thing. I wouldn't even say it's a right or wrong thing. And so how do you even evaluate sin in that sense, right? So how to rethink sin, and also how does God look at you when we are in that state of incapacity, right?
Yeah.
But I think overall you also went through a kind of a spiritual rebirth or reawakening, and I think our whole family did in one way or another. Even as far back as when we were still in the States, you were doing neurofeedback, and we went to these we went through this like a small group that talks about healing and renewal, and that culminates in a one day kind of retreat-esque kind of experience. I don't know if you remember some of that.
Yeah. I think that largely, like spiritually for me, what that did, because I am a Christian, but I think that, I mean, it is a little like, I don't know, tricky to describe, because my idea of what being a Christian is still so different from what somebody else might call a Christian. And so, and my own understanding of being a Christian has changed over time a lot too. And so I think that class for me, I think it was just really good as an example of what a Christian environment could be when it wasn't so toxic. So I think I was in a pretty toxic Christian environment before, because I think there's a lot of oversimplification of, life in general, and issues and problems, and I guess this general unwillingness to acknowledge and see that there are difficult things in life. And so I think that when I was in a Christian environment where that stuff was, I guess, where people were willing to look at the ugly side of life, then that felt good. That felt like something I could get on board with. Because I think that, growing up, I feel like I've always kind of had like a love-hate relationship with Christianity or with my faith or with religion. And I think in a lot of ways it is very toxic, because I think that like sin and salvation, everything is framed in a way, or like repentance, all that kind of thing is framed in a way that really like it can promote self-hate. And I think it's very, very, very easy to fall into that. And I think I really, really, really bought into that. And I think that, that is one of the things that like drove my self-harm, for example. And I think that it was just a very unhealthy like mindset to be in. And being in that that Bible course, that was helpful in that, like, I could it was an environment where people wanted to address the bad things or the ugly things and the problems in life in a space of non-judgment. And so, like, where everybody was willing to say, like, oh, I have this issue and that issue, and that, we're not here to say that, like, we're not here to say that you're bad or you're condemned for doing this, but that we all want to get better. And I think that that was one good step towards seeing right and wrong, or seeing life not so much in terms of sin. Because I think we are just focusing way too much on sin, or it's like a hyper focus on sin or the bad things. And because there are so many things, like countless things that, you're not supposed to do, just don't do that, don't do this. And I think that way of thinking I think it's very common, but I don't think it's very helpful. I think that just knowing how people work too, motivationally, or like how to, like, if you look at like training a dog, for example, like they don't function so well when you like punish them for doing something like that they did wrong, like some punishment or acknowledgement is good of what they did if they messed up, but positive reinforcement is so much more powerful behaviorally, because that's kind of how our brain works in learning. And so when you reward good behavior, we get a little bit of dopamine, and we learn to reinforce that behavior or reinforce that association with the thing that is good. And so I think if we're looking at like a learning perspective, it's more powerful, or you can make more powerful change through positive reinforcement. And I think that if that applied to like Christianity or religion or behavior, I think that would look more like shooting for something rather than not doing these things. So I think sin is really focusing on like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. But I would so much rather have an example of what to do rather than what not to do. And I think that's, like, I think it just works out better that way. And also you get rid of the like judgment and all of the pain that causes, because that is something so huge that pushes so many people away.
Yeah, I feel that ultimately they impact our picture of who God is. I think what we were, I grew up with, you grew up with, I think a lot of the typical church experiences is that we have a very angry and scary God, and it's always about me doing either good thing or bad thing. There's like nothing in between. There's almost like no learning in between where you can try, right? So, so understanding that in fact God is not like that. He's loving, and he's unconditionally accepting and loving to begin with, and how because he's like that, we can be like that toward others and toward ourselves. I felt that was a significant lesson for, at least for me. I remember, I think for you and I in particular, we didn't have a very good relationship. I mean, you always behaved, you acted properly whenever I'm home. But I also remember you said that you hated me, right? And
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, and that didn't really change until a moment. I think it was one time when you had a really bad case of cutting in the bathroom, and you just locked yourself in. It was all bloody, um, and it was at that moment when I think it's literally the Holy Spirit reminding me that it's what you needed at that moment. Is not more control or more judgment or behavioral condemnation, but what you needed at that moment is God's nature, which is unconditionally accepting. And so it's not about control, and that I need to trust that that's how God is, and that's how I need to be. I think it's the turning point in our relationship was really at that time, and I think I'm still learning more and more how important that is, that unconditional, the way God interact with us with that unconditional love and acceptance. It's not about all the black and whites and the judgment, and God is not like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize it was like that, just a one moment for you. I honestly don't really remember. Like, I don't have a good picture of a timeline of that whole time, but yeah, I guess I do remember. I remember thinking that, like, oh, I hate my dad at some point. But yeah, like I do think that, like, over time, because I think that, like, in most Christian environments, at least the Christian environments that I've been in, um, I wasn't able to see this picture of this unconditionally loving God, and I'm sure, like, we hear it all the time that God's unconditionally loving, and that, like, His love is so great and blah blah blah. But I really had no picture of it. Like, no picture of it, not even in church, or like not from any church figures, and not from the Christian authority figures around me at all. And I think that, like, seeing it from you was when I started to, I feel like, understand that Christianity isn't so bad, or doesn't have to be so bad. If there's a God that's like this, or that actually cares about me like this, or that would deal with me like this, then, like, I can start to, I can get with it, like, it makes sense, because I think that, like, I think with a lot of issues people have, that, yeah, it isn't judgment or control that they need, but I guess, people need love and acceptance, and I think that it's only after that, because I think a lot of people don't even accept themselves, and they're also judging themselves, and it's not that, it's not that we don't want to acknowledge that there's something wrong, but I think that that's the first step in starting to get better. And yeah, I think that, like, in a Christian environment, it's really hard to see that, but yeah, that, I think that was a turning point.
Yeah, so obviously for you and I, our whole family, we're still continuing to change and growth, and I think that's a lifelong journey. And whether just as a normal human being, or I think even more so as a Christian, that we are supposed to be growing more like Christ every day. And so we are still developing, I think, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So that's what we hope to do in the future conversations. We want to explore different topics, seek to have, and I want to want it to be more than just these intellectual discussions. I think it's more important that we have some practices that we can engage in. So we'll be talking about different books that we find, or topics that we find helpful in a future conversation in these areas. Even though you're in America and I'm in Taiwan, but thanks to internet and these video conferencing tools, we can continue to do that. So, well, this is a start, and hopefully we'll be able to do this like once a few weeks or so. And I think that's about it. Do you have anything else that you feel like you want to add, or?
No, this is good.
No? Okay. So it's a wrap for today.
Yeah.